What's poppin', y'all? It's Vanessa Squire, and I'm back to talk to you about role models.
Oh my god, Ronnie.
When you think about role models, you usually think about parents, teachers, babysitters, anybody that has like a duty or role or responsibility to look after children. But in this video, I want to push you a little bit to think outside of those boundaries. Have you ever thought about influencers or certain celebrities, athletes, and musicians and whether they have a duty to act as role models to children? I think this is a very, very important conversation today, especially because all of these groups have so much influence nationally. When you go to social media or open your phone, you usually see all of these influencers, celebrities, musicians, athletes, basketball players, football players. You see all of these people. And kids nowadays have phones starting from like the 4th and 5th grade. And so they're seeing these things at a young age. Wait, I honestly might be showing my age right now. Do kids have phones at earlier ages? But anyways, kids have phones at really, really early ages. And so they're seeing these things. They can influence children's behavior. Do these athletes, celebrities have a responsibility to act a certain way because their viewers are children? Let's think about a few situations. Manny Ramirez's 50-game suspension for performance-enhancing drugs. Michael Phelps losing his endorsements for smoking weed. Let's think. Michael Vick being suspended for dogfighting in the NFL, losing endorsements because of that, affecting their careers. These situations, do these athletes have a responsibility not to do these things because their viewers are children? Is it our business? Should these things even be reported on? I mean, these are the types of questions that we have to start asking. So in this video, I personally hope to delve into, should athletes, should musicians, should influencers be considered role models? Let's get into it. So let's dive into this question. Do athletes, celebrities, and musicians and influencers in totality have a duty to serve as role models for children? There are two perspectives. The first perspective is yes, they do have a duty, especially because they influence on such a mass scale. We see their behaviors and what they do on all types of media. It is their responsibility to care about children and what they see because those are the people that are inevitably going to watch. These are the people that influence their lives. And even though we like to think that people talk to their parents, that people talk to their babysitters, that they talk to these people in their lives, they really look at rappers and look at other people to influence their behavior. It influences the way you dress, the way you think, whether you drink, whether you smoke. Some people think that this burden should be put on celebrities solely because of their mass scale of influence. Others believe that it's not their responsibility. It's a parent's responsibility to raise their kids. That's what a lot of people think. It shouldn't be my job as a celebrity who's just here to do my talent to worry about how your kid receives it or what your kid does or how they respond to my actions. So there are two conflicting perspectives. And one thing that I really want to highlight as an overarching theme is whether media has a responsibility not to necessarily report on these things. Is it news that these people are doing drugs? Is it news that these people are getting arrested? Are they doing this to educate us, or are they doing it just to get us to click on these things because they know those types of things get clicks? Should we be thinking about this overarching duty of the media to not necessarily be plaguing us with these things? In this video, I'm going to get into 5, maybe 4, or maybe 3. You all know that I can't count. Reasons why I personally believe, or why other people personally believe, that athletes should or should not be role models. And in addition to athletes, I'm also going to discuss musicians and influencers and anyone that really falls into that umbrella. So let's get into it. So I'm going to give you the most legal and annoying answer ever on all of these things. It really depends. And I think I can break it down into 5 buckets, or 4. But let's get into it. Here's number 1. Some people think that celebrities and influencers should be considered role models depending on what their target audience is. And by this, I'll break it down. For example, Taylor Swift has a huge fan base that usually is between the ages of like 9 and 18. She might have a higher duty to be a role model to kids because that's her predominant fan base. Russell Brand, in comparison, who has extremely vulgar comedy, is absolutely hilarious, usually has a much more adult audience, TVMA for sure, might not necessarily have this duty. Where the waters get really muddied is in athletics, because there's such a wide fan base for athletics. For example, kids watch basketball games. They come to the basketball games with their parents. So you're getting toddlers, little like 3 to 5 to 10-year-olds, but also 30 to 50-year-olds because of parents, young adults. Really every single age range watches sports. It goes to sports games. So do these athletes have responsibilities? It's tricky. I personally don't have an opinion. I just think it's difficult because if I'm a 30-year-old or if I'm older in life, do I want to not live my life in the way that I intend in fear that someone will see? That's really the question that we're here for, and I don't have the answer. I feel like you guys are gonna come here looking for answers, but that's really the crux of the issue. And circling back to the point, it all really depends on your target audience and what you're comfortable with and your own moral compass. 2, some people never signed up to be role models. I think the waters, again, really get muddied with athletes. Their talent thrusts them into the public eye. You go from playing basketball in a high school gym, some people get recruited directly out of high school into the NBA or get drafted directly out of high school into the NBA or college. So this is a group of like 17 to 22-year-olds that are serving as role models when they were just children yesterday. Do they have that responsibility? Are they allowed to make mistakes? That's another question that can get constantly asked. By having this burden on them, it almost disallows them to live their life in fear that the media will see and kids will see, which is a really big burden for someone to have. But some people don't necessarily sign up for it. When I think of this type of person in my head, I think of Kawhi Leonard, who's just in there to play basketball, get this check, be the greatest in the gym, and leave. Does someone like that have a duty to be a role model? For musicians, for example, they love the fame. Some people try to be famous and they like that part of being famous and like the public eye. Others don't. When I think of that type of person, I think of Summer Walker, who really just likes to sing and wants to sing and has a lot of social anxiety because she's been required to be this public icon when in fact she just wants to sing. So that's another kind of area where it gets a little difficult because you never know if these people actually want to be role models, let alone constantly photographed, constantly followed, constantly analyzed. It's a big burden. The third, going back to what I was talking about with athletes, a lot of these people are children, like legitimately children. They come out of high school at the age of 16, 17, 18, and they get drafted, and now all of a sudden they're required to be role models. Even if you come out of college, you're about 21 years old, that has little to no life experience, and now all of a sudden you're analyzed on a mass scale. Even musicians, when you look at the average age of musicians, these are people in their 20s, or influencers. These are literally such young people. Are they required to be role models for other young people when they're in fact themselves young? That can be really nerve-wracking and a lot of pressure to put on another teen. But again, this is where things get complicated. It's gonna be complicated. I don't have the answers. I just know that it'd be difficult to put this responsibility on another child. The last thing I wanna highlight is this idea of duty. A lot of people see this idea of duty in the law and having a duty to care to someone if you're a doctor, a duty to care to someone if you're a lawyer, just to make sure that you have due care in whatever those processes are. When I think of a duty, I also think of it with a political figure and having a duty to your constituents. When we vote to elect you, you have to keep your promises because we're your constituents. You have to please us because we're your voting group. Do celebrities and influencers have a duty to their viewers? We don't necessarily vote for them, but we watch, we stream, we view. We're not necessarily the reason that they're this famous, but a part of the process and a part of the overarching reason why they are as big as they are. Do they have a duty to us? And again, I think it all comes back to whether or not that's your target audience. But also, I'm not the pillar of code for morality. So it's just an assessment of whether you personally believe whether or not someone has a duty. And then when you make that assessment about what you personally believe, determine whether it's your duty to speak on it or just keep it in your brain. But yes, that is the crux of the video. That is what I want to get into because these people have such large skills of influence. And it's really a discussion about whether or not they should be role models to children. And you know, in a few years, or even right now, some of us may have children. And this is a conversation that we're gonna be having when we see our young kids watching these things and I'm like, oh my gosh, is my child watching the City Girls? And then I'm gonna be in my head dancing to the City Girls and then realizing, wait, is it okay if my child is listening to this? So you just gotta make some considerations. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe and enjoy.